This is exactly why I stopped bidding on mid-grade comics. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up a shipment of comics that I won at auction over a year ago, where I was targeting all different types of comics, but in sort of a mid to lower high grade range, thinking that I was getting really good deals on these books. And what I have found out through this process is that I really need to avoid these types of comics. I have the data and examples to show you exactly why. And if you stay to the end of this video, I'll show you exactly what I ended up bidding on these books, what my final bids were to win each of these comics, and then comparing those final bids not just against fair market value, but also taking their listed advertised condition, comparing that to fair market value, and then also, even if I were to get them pressed and cleaned up and submitted for professional grading, I then want to see if it would be worth my while even at that point, or if I should just keep the books raw. Now, my entire strategy for how I attack comic book auctions has completely changed since I bid on these books, and I think that this will give you a really good example of why it's probably best to shy away from mid-grade books. If you are trying to get them cleaned and pressed, hopefully get a grade bump, then submit them off for professional grading. I personally enjoy that process. I love that workflow, but in some cases, it's just not worth the trouble. And for me, there's a cutoff in the grade. I think it used to be the case that even some of these mid-grade from Bronze and early Copper Age had some desirability and value, but as time has gone on, the values for these books have really dropped off to the point where you could make the case in the argument that they're not worth grading and they're not really holding any value graded. So then you're just sort of refocusing and shifting your collecting habits to just keeping these books raw, which I'm perfectly fine with. I got some really nice late 70s books in this set of auction wins that are going to be great, as I try to complete runs of some of these titles. But I'm trying to find sort of those diamonds in the rough as well. And typically when I'm bidding on a set of books, there is a segment that I will keep raw for various reasons. Either I'm filling out a run, or maybe I am getting my first copy of a book and I'm setting that baseline so that I can try to find the book in better condition, kind of like setting an upgrade path in a way where if I get the book and it's a 6.0, then I know that that's my floor and I'll only want to find that book in the future if it is above fine condition, because then my goal would be to upgrade it and then see if I can do something with the lesser copy, list it for sale, try and trade it, and so forth. So there's various reasons as a collector why I would keep these books raw and be happy with it, but then I'm also looking for a percentage of my auction wins to send off for cleaning, pressing, and grading to help maybe offset what I spent for the books that I ended up keeping raw. And as I went through this, it's just a lot of books to keep track of. I rely on my spreadsheets then to go ahead and analyze the order, look at the grades, look at the advertised conditions, then what grade I've applied to the books and so forth. And what I think will be interesting to see is even if some of these books that I picked up in mid-grade were able to get 2 or 3 grade bumps, the question becomes, is it still worth it? Are they just so far away from a collectible grade? Meaning, if I'm buying a 6, are people really only interested in this book if it's a 9.0 or above? Of course, the higher the grade, the better the condition, the more collectible and value the book is. But what I'm trying to find is a more budget-friendly grade where there's still some value and still some collectability. And what I'm finding is over time, that's disappearing. It's completely eroding to the point where it's a really kind of a have and a have-not situation. So I want to get to the unboxing. I'll show you the really cool, great comics that I picked up at auction. And then I'll show you the order summary where we can analyze the comic values themselves, compare those values to the final bids, and then make that final decision as far as should I keep the book raw or further invest in it. So let's get to this unboxing. All right, so here is the shipment that I received from Infinity Comics. These are books that I won at auction back in August of 2023. Yes, I've held on to this shipment for a year, and I am excited to finally get an opportunity to open it and show you the books that I bid on. And once again, it's a little bit of a time machine where you can go back and kind of see what I was thinking about when I first started getting into bidding on books from Infinity Comics. But their sort of workflow for getting books to me, as far as shipping goes and timing, that hasn't changed. Books are always well packed and shipped out in a very timely manner, and everything arrives safely thanks to the fragile label that they always put on their packaging. That really helps. So after a year, it's finally time to get this opened up. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at the comics that I won at auction, starting with Astonishing Tales number 32. I picked this up because of the Rich Buckler cover, also Astonishing Tales featuring Deathlock. Deathlock, kind of an interesting, it was like a tier C character, but first appeared in Astonishing Tales. This is not his first appearance, but had a very short run in Astonishing Tales in the mid 70s. And then I also picked up Astonishing Tales number 33. It's the first appearance of Hellinger, the creator of Deathlock, and apparently some super cool story involving a briefcase. It's Astonishing Tales 33. And it looks like we're just going in alphabetical order. This is Catwoman 52. I've always loved this really cool close-up of Adam Hughes cover of Catwoman, and then also with Black Mask here in the reflection of her goggles. Always a tough book to find in high grade because of the cover design. And also picked up Catwoman number 56. Another great Adam Hughes cover. This is part of his run of covers on Catwoman in the mid 2000s. Next is Doctor Strange number 6. Trying to put together a full run of, I guess this is the second series of Doctor Strange, as Strange Tales became exclusive to Doctor Strange, and then that was kind of his first series, but this is his first or second solo series is what I'm trying to put together. Really awesome Frank Brunner cover. I still feel like he's very underrated. Did so many great covers on Doctor Strange. This one from 1974. And then these should be a decent run of Doctor Strange books. Doctor Strange number 7. This is cover art by Gil Kane. Then we have Doctor Strange number 9. Really nice cover with Dormammu. Got Clea on the cover. This is actually her origin issue. So a Doctor Strange key or a minor key there. Then also Doctor Strange number 12. This be Doomsday. Doctor Strange has looked better than he does here on this cover. Got Gene Colan and Tom Palmer on cover art on that one. Another great Gene Colan and Tom Palmer cover on Doctor Strange number 17. You know what Infinity Comics will do is they'll list their books alphabetically. So that makes it really easy for me to set up my tracking because I can just go through one title in one series, look up the values and study the values, and then look at my alignment of my analysis against the books alphabetically, which is why I would typically kind of get a short run of books from the same title. So that's Doctor Strange 17 and another Doctor Strange. This is number 29. Back to Frank Brunner on cover art. And we have Doctor Strange teaming up with Nighthawk. And then the last Doctor Strange book, Doctor Strange 30. Frank Brunner again on cover art. This one also featuring Clea. This also features the first appearance of the Dweller of Darkness. And I lied, one more Doctor Strange. This one from 1978. All right, moving on alphabetically, we now have Ghost Rider number 16. Always love this one with Ghost Rider battling a shark, and the fact that they were able to put Jaws on the cover in the gripping tradition of we have blood in the water. Ghost Rider's skull still on fire there underwater. But really cool book from 1976. And then the last one in this pile, starting a run of Iron Man. This is Iron Man 108 featuring The Growing Man. Keith Pollard on cover art with a guest appearance and team up with Yellow Jacket. All right, moving on to the second pile, we have Iron Man 118. This is the first appearance of James Rhodes. He later becomes War Machine. He's had a starring role in many MCU films. Cover art here by Bob Layton. But really happy to get this key first appearance of James Rhodes there in Iron Man 118. And then we have Iron Man 120, another Iron Man key. This is the first appearance of Justin Hammer. This is also the first part of Demon in a Bottle, arguably the most famous Iron Man storyline, maybe next to Armor Wars. But love grabbing this book, Iron Man 120, featuring the Submariner. And we have Iron Man 142. This is the debut of Iron Man's space armor. Really, I probably, aside from the War Machine armor, I don't really collect first appearances of armor. It just doesn't really hold any interest or value. There's so many iterations of Iron Man's armor. And I think this was a period where they were trying some different things. There's the issue with stealth armor and so on. But a fun cover and story here by Bob Layton. And the last Iron Man book in this run is Iron Man 149. I love Iron Man 149 and 150 featuring Doctor Doom. So this is a close-up of Doom's face with Iron Man, I guess a reflection of Iron Man and Doctor Doom's eyeball. And I have a couple of nice high-grade graded copies of Iron Man 150 and would love to have 149 next to it. I don't know if that specific copy is going to do it for me, as it is mid-grade, but we'll see. Not another Doctor Strange book. This is Marvel Premiere number 10. This was the most expensive pickup in this set of auction wins. This is the first appearance of Shuma Gorath. Again, Frank Brunner on cover art here featuring Doctor Strange. I think prior to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, that was considered a key. Now it's probably just a minor key. This is New X-Men number 128, part of the really fantastic Grant Morrison run of New X-Men, with Jean Grey Phoenix featured here on cover art. And this is the first appearance of Phantom X, who has had some off and on significance in the X-Men universe. But really enjoy the Grant Morrison run on New X-Men. Then we have Punisher number 2, featuring cover art by Mike Zeck. This is the first solo series of the Punisher. It's actually limited series, so the first ongoing would be a series that began, I think, in 1987. This is about a year or two prior to that. I'm looking for a full run of this limited series, as all the Mike Zeck covers are awesome. On the Punisher, now this is the first solo ongoing series of the Punisher, and this is issue 10 of that series. Punisher number 10, guest starring Daredevil. Probably aside from issue 1, this is one of the more collectible and desirable early issues from the run, as it features one of the early meetups or battles of those two characters. Next is Hulk 173. Love this 20-cent cover of Incredible Hulk. Cover art by Herb Trimpe. I am 8 issues off of Trimpe's better or more famous issue of Incredible Hulk. So it's a little early on this one, but here Hulk is battling the Cobalt Man. A couple more to go, and both of these are Wonder Woman covers back to Adam Hughes. This is Wonder Woman 169, Paradise Island Lost, Part 2 of 2. But I'm picking these up because of the Adam Hughes cover art, and the last one, also an Adam Hughes cover. This is Wonder Woman 171. So really love those Adam Hughes runs on Catwoman and Wonder Woman, and always like to pick up issues of those series with cover art by Hughes. Now, from maybe zoomed out and far away, these books look great. I mean, who wouldn't love to have all of these in high grade, in near mint, and so on? But the problem is that let's take Iron Man 149 as an example and just quickly kind of zoom in on it. You can see there's color breaks, stacking crease. It's quite dirty, issues around the staple, corner rounding. So a very, very typical like 6 to 7.5 mid-grade copy. And that's what all of these books really are. And so now I want to show you the order summary where you can see the listed condition, and I'll show you the grades and values of these books in those listed conditions, and then start to compare the values if we were to get some grade bumps and so forth. So let me show you the order summary so you can see what I ended up bidding to acquire these books. All right, here is the order summary for the books that I won at auction back on August 3rd, 2023 from Infinity Comics on the platform HipComic. I was invoiced a total of $212.33. That includes shipping of $22.99, and then I had to pay tax as a California resident. So when you see the amount here in this column, this is my final bid. which is, since less is less, it's far more attractive than maybe the actual bid and the total cost that I'll show you here in a moment because of the tax and the shipping, where the shipping's distributed across all of the books. So I can see the like full door to door, what is my total cost to specifically acquire the book. And that helps me figure out, should I further invest in the book? I really try to understand tax and shipping and all of that and everything involved to acquire it. So what I ended up doing here is in the grade column, I assigned the grade point associated with the listed condition. So for Iron Man 118, it was listed in fine condition with an exclamation point. Because it was a key, I think that was where the exclamation point was coming in. Not so much that that book is interesting in a 6.0. So I gave it a 6.0 here so that I could better compare the cover price fair market value within their grade ranges. And then does the book have any value if I were to get it graded by CGC? So using this as an example, in a 6.0 fine condition, Iron Man 118 has a cover price fair market value of about $27, and it has a CGC value of $42. Now, if I move a little bit over to the right so that you can start to see these total costs that are involved, looking at Iron Man 118, door to door, it cost me $23.37 to acquire the book, just under the cover price fair market value. So that was a decent pickup with a raw value add of $3.63 and a CGC value loss of $6 if I were to send that book graded and it came back a 6.0. And so that's kind of what this analysis helps me figure out is, should I do anything with the book? Should I keep it raw? Did I overpay? Did I underpay? And certainly from a raw book perspective, if you're looking here in the summary, I have added, according to cover price values, $141.67 of raw comic book value to my collection on top of the $212.33 that I spent. However, if I were to get these books graded, this is where that would be considered a mistake, a pretty bad choice, just to send all of these books in blindly. And I kind of know that going in, that these are not books necessarily that are in that collectible grade that I was talking about, where you're trying to find the margin or difference between that first grade that returns a positive value between the value of the book graded in that grade and in that condition against what you ended up paying for it. And so that's what I try to figure out. Lots of big negative numbers here contributing to that negative $167 CGC loss in this specified advertised condition. Now, this may not be the actual raw grade. I do need to go through the books myself and assign what I think are the actual grades of the books. Typically with Infinity Comics, they're in the ballpark, but they do undergrade just slightly. So this could be a case where, something advertised in a 6.0 is maybe a 6.5. I'd be very fortunate if I would get a couple of grade bumps, so that book would be a 7. It's just a general rule of thumb as far as how I approach bidding and looking at values, is I do more or less take the advertised condition and work off of that to make generalized decisions. But really, I do like to spend the additional time going through each comic and adding my own personal grade to the book. And then also I label the book as needing a press or a clean and press if need be. In my experience, they're all going to need some sort of attention to help with the condition if I do want to further invest in the book. The only time I really would get a book and not want to clean and press it is if it had some sort of tear or severe color breaks. And in that case, then I would just leave it as is. Just because those types of defects really detract not only from the value, but also just the general appearance and collectability and desirability of the book. Now, the last piece that I'll show you as far as the evaluation goes, if I keep moving to the right, what I end up doing is figuring out if the book were to get a grade bump or 2 or 3, then what type of CGC value are we dealing with? Now, taking Iron Man 118 as an example, you would think first appearance of James Rhodes, hey, that's kind of a big deal. It should have some value if you would get that clean and pressed. And this is what I'm finding out, is because the starting point is right down the middle, mid-grade, there's a couple of things happening. Number one, the values at that grade and 1, 2, and 3 grade bumps above it, it's not as much as you think. And it's a lot of grades to jump over to get to that collectible grade, which, if I'm guessing, is probably an 8.5, maybe an 8. And what these values represent here is $40, that's the CGC 6.5, 4820 is the 7.0, and 5180 is the 7.5. So then the decision kind of presents itself where it just doesn't make a lot of financial sense to go ahead and add any more investment into the book. And the decision is really driven on the what I call press status. So if I did say, yep, that book needs a clean and press, then I've got this press value that pops in and some other data. And this column and this value, this negative $24.34, this really becomes the driver for the translation into a decision, which the basic explanation here is if I take this book as a 6.0 and I submit it for cleaning and pressing and then send it off for grading, and it only comes back as either a 6, 6.5, 7, or 7.5, looking at those average values and the cost to acquire the book, the investment to get it cleaned up and submitted for grading, and trying to figure out all of the cost involved. If it's less than 0, it's not worth the trouble. If you really wanted a graded copy of a 6 or a 7.0 of Iron Man 118, the first appearance of James Rhodes, you're better off just buying it already slabbed. And you could probably get a slab of that book in a 6 or a 7 for a very, very good deal because somebody, probably like me, submitted it for grading. It came back a lower grade and they're willing to let go of it at a very, very affordable price. So that's kind of the general premise here. So if I just go back and say all of these books should be cleaned and pressed, and I want to see what the decision should be, then let's do that. And I'll just mark it P with a press and copy that all the way down. And the only book that seems like it would be worth it in the listed condition, again, so that my assigned grade may differ slightly from the advertised condition because Infinity Comics typically is either accurate or they undergrade their books. So as is, the Punisher #2 in a VF minus, if I were to get that book pressed, assuming that it doesn't have lots of color breaks and other things that can't be pressed out, but if it did have maybe some wrinkling or some creasing that where the condition could benefit, then that's the only one that would actually be worth my time, worth my presser's time, and then worth the additional money to go ahead and get that graded. And specifically, if we're looking at a VF minus, which is a 7.5, this is the value in an 8 and an 8.5 and a 9. And it's really all about finding that collectible minimum condition, which for Punisher #2 looks to be about a 9.0. Now, this also could be historical sales, so it's possible that even a 9.2 might be less than 100, but trying to remain consistent. I could certainly add 4, 5, 6 grade bumps and take the average, but the likelihood that a 6.0 would jump to a 9.4, it's pretty small, so I try to really just limit it to 3 grade bumps. Now, of course, I'd have to go through the books in more detail because ultimately, I'm the one making the decision with my comics and my collection, and so I want to assign my grade to the books. But until I provide that level of detail and invest the amount of time to check out each book and catalog it and grade it and so forth, this gives me kind of a general idea of how well I did with these auctions, meaning I can see that it has a lot of raw value add potential to my collection. All great titles, great books that I love to collect, very mainstream, recognizable characters and so forth. These are the books that I like to collect. As I said, I like to try and upgrade them, get them in the highest condition possible. So this gives me a general idea to say, I did pretty well from the perspective of getting bids in for raw books that have value if I keep them raw. But also what this tells me is that the conditions of these books are not high enough to do anything else with them. They're really great starter copies. They're great copies to, again, look at kind of the floor in terms of trying to provide an upgrade path for you on these books. There's lots of reasons why it would make sense to collect these books in these conditions. And also, I made sure that my bids were appropriate. I didn't want to overbid for a book in a 6.0, regardless of whether or not it has value in a CGC slab. So it gives me that general assessment of how well I did, and if there's any maybe books I want to cherry pick, like I will certainly probably start with Punisher #2 and look at that and see, okay, my decision engine is telling me that book should be pressed. I want to verify that, assign my own grade, and kind of work with that. So it really helps me figure out the potential of these books and just kind of how I want to categorize and store them in my collection. And lastly, back to kind of my working theory is my goal is to have a collection of high grade comic books, regardless of keys and grails and so on. If I'm going to collect a book, I want it to be in as high grade as possible. Now, I'd say about 3/4 of these books are going to be brand new entries into my collection. I don't have any other copies. So these are kind of my starter copies, if you will, on those conditions. And while for me, there's a lot of merit and value in doing that, I think that what I learned over time is that it's okay to wait and kind of hold out for, instead of a 6.0 copy, look for an 8.0 or an 8.5 copy and maybe start there. And it took me a while to kind of trust and believe that I'll see this book again. Part of it is that FOMO, like I may never see Doctor Strange #6 again at auction, and to be able to get it with a final bid of around $5, it seemed too good to be true. And that's exactly what it was. It was too good to be true, because in a Fine Plus, not a lot of desirability, with that book being in the $5 to $10 range for the book raw, and very little value if graded by CGC. So what I've learned over time is to not so much get caught up in the book itself at that mid-grade condition, and try to wait and be patient to get one in higher grade, because the price that you're going to pay for that 8.0 or 8.5 raw is not that much more than you would at auction for that 6.0 copy. So it's worth holding out and waiting for the book to come along in higher grade. Let me know what you think about these comics that I won at auction. Hopefully all of that explanation made sense as far as how I approach bidding, and what I learned over time to maybe pass on some of these and be more patient and hold out for higher grade copies. You can see kind of why, through my analysis, it makes sense to me to kind of back away from accumulating a lot of these mid-grade comics and wait for those books to come along in higher grade. Let me know what you think. Feel free to leave me a comment on this video. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.